USCIS is quietly denying green card renewals over simple Form I-90 mistakes, and most permanent residents don't even know they're doing it wrong. If you're a green card holder about to file your renewal, watch this first, or you could put your U.S. residency at risk. Green card holders are panicking after seeing stories of green card renewal denied for small mistakes. Is USCIS really rejecting Form I-90 applications over tiny errors? And could your next renewal put your permanent residency at risk? Watch this before you file your green card renewal. I am sharing general information for education, based on official USCIS guidance and real patterns that have shown up over the years. Your personal situation could be different. If you have specific concerns about your green card, your Form I-90, or your immigration history, you should speak directly with a qualified U.S. immigration attorney. Let's start with the most important truth that almost nobody making panic content wants to say. In the vast majority of cases, green card renewals are approved. USCIS receives and processes huge numbers of green card renewal applications, Form I-90, over time. Most of those cases are approved without major problems. The horror stories you see online usually come from two types of situations. Either there were specific, preventable filing mistakes, or there were serious background issues in that person's history that were already a problem long before the renewal. USCIS is not sitting there trying to find excuses to deport every permanent resident. What they are doing is checking for correct forms and fees, clear identity, eligibility, and any security or criminal red flags. The good news is that many of the common problems you hear about are under your control. You can avoid them if you know what to look for. Let's walk through the most common mistakes that can cause a Form I-90 green card renewal to be rejected, delayed, or denied, and what you should do to protect yourself. Mistake number 1 is using the wrong form, or using an outdated version of the right form. To renew a standard 10-year green card, the correct form is Form I-90, Application to Replace Permanent Resident Card. USCIS updates this form periodically. When they do, they post a new edition date, and after a while, they stop accepting older editions. If you mail in an old version after its use-by date, USCIS can reject your application before anyone even looks at your answers. How do people fall into this trap? Some people download Form I-90 once, save it on their computer, and print that same file years later without checking whether USCIS has updated the form. Others search online and end up using an unofficial website that's still hosting an old version. Some get copies from a friend, a community helper, or a notary who hasn't refreshed their forms in a long time. The fix here is simple but important. Always download Form I-90 directly from the official USCIS website, uscis.gov, on the same day you plan to fill it out. When you open the PDF, scroll to the bottom and check the edition date. On the Form I-90 page, USCIS tells you which edition they are currently accepting. Those dates must match. If they don't, do not use that form. If you file I-90 online through a USCIS account, you don't have to worry about edition dates. The system gives you the current version automatically. But if you're filing on paper, this is one of the easiest mistakes to avoid and one of the most frustrating if you don't. A related point, if you have a 2-year conditional green card from a recent marriage or an EB-5 investment, you generally do not use Form I-90 to renew that card. You use Form I-751 or Form I-829 to remove conditions. Using I-90 when you should be removing conditions can cause real problems, so make sure you're using the right form for your type of card. Mistake number 2 is filing at the wrong time. Most standard green cards for permanent residents are valid for 10 years. Conditional cards are valid for 2 years and, as I just mentioned, follow a different process. For a 10-year card, USCIS allows you to file Form I-90 to renew up to 6 months, 180 days, before your card's expiration date. That means you can't just file anytime you feel like it, years in advance, and you shouldn't ignore it until long after it expires either. If you file too early, say more than 6 months before expiration, USCIS can reject your application as premature. If you wait until your card is already expired, you can usually still renew, but life gets harder while you wait. You may run into trouble proving work authorization to employers. You may have issues with airlines or CBP when you travel. You may have problems renewing a driver's license or state ID. It's important to separate the plastic card from your actual status. If your green card expires, your status as a lawful permanent resident does not automatically disappear with the expiration date. Your status continues unless a formal legal process ends it, such as abandonment or a removal order from an immigration judge. However, in everyday life, people rely on the card as proof of that status. So an expired card causes real inconvenience and raises more questions when you're dealing with employers, agencies, or border officers. The best approach is to plan ahead. Check the expiration date on your card now. Set reminders 8 to 10 months before that date. File your I-90 within the 6-month window before it expires. If your card is already expired, don't panic, but do file as soon as you can. When you file, your I-90 receipt notice usually includes automatic extension language that extends the validity of your card for a certain period while USCIS processes your case. If you urgently need something stronger, you may be able to get an I-551 stamp in your passport from USCIS to prove status temporarily. Mistake number 3 is submitting photos that don't meet USCIS standards. It sounds like a tiny detail, but it causes a lot of delays. USCIS uses specific photo rules that are very similar to U.S. passport photos. The photos usually must be recent, often taken within the last 30 days. Always check current instructions. Be the correct size, commonly 2 x 2 inches. Have a plain white or off-white background. Show a full front view of your face with a neutral expression and eyes clearly visible. Not include glasses, even if you wear them every day. Only include head coverings for religious reasons, and even then, your full face must be visible. Common photo mistakes include using old photos from years ago, taking casual photos or selfies against busy backgrounds, having harsh shadows on your face or in the background, wearing glasses, hats, or fashion headwear. USCIS processes huge volumes of applications and depends on uniform photo quality for identification and security reasons. Fortunately, this is completely under your control. You can avoid this problem by having your photos taken by a place that does U.S. passport or immigration photos all the time, pharmacies, shipping stores, photo centers, and studios that are familiar with U.S. standards. When you go, say clearly that the photos are for a U.S. immigration application, Form I-90 Green Card Renewal. Before you send your application, compare the photos with the official USCIS photo guidelines on USCIS.gov. Spending a few extra minutes on this step can save you weeks of delay. Mistake number 4 is submitting incomplete forms or missing signatures. Form I-90 is long and detailed. USCIS expects you to answer every question that applies to you. Leaving things blank, skipping questions, or forgetting to sign the form will get you into trouble. Common errors include forgetting to sign and date on the signature page, leaving out parts of your address and employment history, skipping questions because they seem confusing or unimportant, not completing the preparer or interpreter sections if someone helped complete the form for you. USCIS treats missing information seriously because they have to verify your identity, your eligibility, and your history. A missing signature is especially painful because it causes a rejection that's entirely avoidable. To prevent this, set aside time where you can focus entirely on the form without rushing. Go through each question slowly. If a question really doesn't apply to you, write NA for not applicable instead of just leaving it blank, unless USCIS instructions say otherwise. Before you send the form, review it line by line and page by page. Make sure every required field is filled and every signature line is signed and dated. If you're filing online, the system often warns you if you miss required fields. Still, you should carefully review your answers before submitting. A few extra minutes double-checking now can prevent months of waiting for a rejected application to come back. Mistake number 5 is having discrepancies or inconsistencies in your personal information. USCIS wants to be confident that the person applying to renew a green card is the same person tied to that A number and record in their system. Inconsistencies that raise red flags include your name being spelled differently on your current green card and your I-90 form, your date of birth being entered incorrectly, you changing your legal name, for example through marriage or court order, but not explaining or documenting that change, your address history suddenly being completely different or not matching other records without explanation. These mismatches cause confusion, Officers must resolve them before they can approve a renewal. That can mean RFEs, delays, or in some cases denials if they cannot confirm your identity or tie your application to your existing record. To avoid this, copy your name, date of birth, and A number exactly as they appear on your current green card and prior USCIS notices, unless you are formally updating your legal name. If you have legally changed your name, include proper documentation with your I-90, marriage certificate, divorce decree, or court order. Triple-check every biographic detail for typos before you file. USCIS is not trying to trick you with this. They are trying to protect both you and the integrity of the system by making sure they're dealing with the right person. Now, let's talk about what happens if you do make one of these mistakes. There's a big difference between a rejection and a denial. A rejection usually happens when USCIS looks at your application at the intake stage and finds something wrong with the filing itself. Wrong form addition, incorrect fee, missing signature, or serious incompleteness. In that case, they often send the whole packet back to you. You can usually correct the problem and refile. A denial happens after USCIS receives your application as properly filed and actually reviews the substance. They then decide not to approve it, often because they believe you're not eligible under the category you applied in, or there is a more serious issue, like certain types of criminal history or fraud concerns. Even if an I-90 is denied, that does not automatically erase your lawful permanent resident status. Your status is not the same thing as the piece of plastic. It is a legal status that usually requires a separate process, like removal proceedings before an immigration judge, to formally end. In other words, an I-90 problem is often a filing problem, not a status-ending event. If you receive a rejection or denial, take a breath. Read the notice very carefully to understand the exact reason. If it's a simple issue, wrong form addition, missing signature, wrong fee, correct it and refile. If it's a more serious reason, consider consulting with a qualified immigration attorney to explore options like appealing, filing a motion to reopen, or addressing underlying issues. This is bureaucracy, not instant catastrophe. There is usually space to respond. Let's also clear up a few broader myths that show up constantly online. Myth: USCIS is looking for any excuse to deny green card renewals now. Reality: the main job of USCIS is to process immigration benefits according to the law, which includes approving correct, eligible applications. They are strict on documentation and form use because of standardization, fraud prevention, and security, not because their secret goal is to purge everyone. The vast majority of green card renewals move forward successfully. Myth: if your green card expires, you're no longer a permanent resident. Reality: your status as a lawful permanent resident does not end on the printed date on your card. The card is proof of your status, not the status itself. That said, you should not let your card stay expired, because society and systems rely on that card as proof, at work, at the DMV, at the airport. Renewing it in time keeps things smooth. Myth: you must have a lawyer just to renew your green card. Reality: many people file Form I-90 themselves without legal help and succeed. The process is designed so that a person with basic English and attention to detail can complete it. A lawyer becomes especially valuable if you have arrests, convictions, or other criminal history, you've spent long periods outside the U.S., and might face abandonment questions. You've had prior immigration issues or complex history. In those cases, investing in professional advice is smart. But for a clean, straightforward renewal, a lot of people do it themselves. Now, a quick word about processing times, because that's where fear often spikes. Form I-90 processing can take several months or more, depending on the service center and workload. Delays are normal, not special punishment. It's common to feel anxious when you don't hear anything for a while, but silence usually just means your case is sitting in line. While you wait, you can use your receipt notice and any automatic extension language as proof your case is pending and your status is extended. Check your status online occasionally with your receipt number. Contact USCIS or talk to a lawyer if your case goes far beyond published normal processing times. Most of the time, though, patience is, unfortunately, part of the process. Finally, let's talk about how you feel in all this. Your green card is more than a document. It represents your effort, sacrifice, and dreams. When you see scary stories suggesting that one tiny mistake on a renewal could destroy your whole life, of course you feel fear. That reaction is human, but fear on its own is not useful. Facts are, the more you understand about how green card renewal actually works, what USCIS is checking, what mistakes can cause problems, and how those mistakes can be fixed, the more control you have. You are not powerless in this process. Here's what I encourage you to do. Check your green card's expiration date and set reminders well in advance. When you're within 6 months of expiration, download the current Form I-90 from USCIS.gov. Get correct photos taken. Fill out the form slowly and carefully. Check every detail twice. Keep copies of everything you send. If you're unsure about something, read the form instructions and USCIS resources. If your situation is complicated, talk to a lawyer before you file. If you've already filed, keep your receipt safe. Use it as needed to show status. Try not to obsess over checking your case every day. If USCIS sends you a request or a notice, read it slowly and respond carefully. Ask for help if you need it. If something goes wrong, do not assume it's the end. It may be something that can be fixed. The U.S. immigration system is not easy or fast, but it is rule-based. The majority of green card renewals go through. The problems that do arise are usually identifiable and solvable. If this explanation from U.S. Citizenship and Visa helped calm your fears and gave you a clearer picture of how green card renewal really works, that's exactly why I made it. You worked hard for your permanent residency. You deserve to feel informed and in control. Stay informed, stay prepared, and as much as possible, stay calm. USCIS is quietly denying green card renewals over simple Form I-90 mistakes, and most permanent residents don't even know they're doing it wrong. If you're a green card holder about to file your renewal, watch this first, or you could put your U.S. residency at risk.